Inauguration Day at the Capitol. Doug Ducey sworn in as Arizona's 23rd governor.
So we will not be searching these next 4 years for new excuses to insert government into the lives of our people.
What our new administration means for the state.
Arizona has been and will continue to be in the spotlight.
This is Arizona Week. Hello, and thanks for joining us. A new year brings new leaders. The swearing in of the state's top officers this past Monday in Phoenix.
Repeat after me. I, Joe Hart, do solemnly swear.
I, Joe Hart, do solemnly swear.
I will support the Constitution of the United States.
I will support the Constitution of the United States.
And the Constitution and laws of the state of Arizona.
And the Constitution and the laws of the state of Arizona.
I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same.
I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same.
Defend them against all enemies.
And defend them against all enemies.
Foreign and domestic.
Foreign and domestic.
And that I will faithfully and impartially discharge.
And that I will faithfully and impartially discharge.
The duties of the office of Secretary of State.
The duties of the office of Secretary of State.
According to the best of my ability.
According to the best of my ability.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Governor, congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Inauguration Day at the state capitol. A Republican sweep of the state's 6 executive offices. Joe Hart, the state's mining inspector for nearly a decade.
It's a very humbling experience today. As I come before you, I get the opportunity to serve with my 5th governor of the state of Arizona. And sitting right here in the front row is the dirty dog that got me into this to begin with. Governor Feinstein came to Kingman, Arizona, and he said, Joe, we need somebody from the northern part of the state to run for the state legislature. I told him very succinctly and positively I did not have the time nor the money. He said, you'll find the time and we'll get the money. Well, Governor, I'm out of both.
A host of newcomers to Arizona politics, starting with Diane Douglas, Superintendent of Public Instruction. The platform of her campaign, eliminating the Arizona College and Career Ready Standards, referred to as Common Core.
I look forward to working with our governor, with President Biggs and Speaker-elect Gowan and our legislators to return control of education where it rightfully belongs, to Arizonans.
Jeff DeWitt, a businessman who says he's never run for office, now takes over as Arizona's treasurer.
I am truly grateful to you for the opportunity to serve our state by using my 22 years of financial experience to oversee $30 billion in inflows and outflows and to safeguard over $13 billion in Arizona taxpayer assets.
And Mark Brnovich, an attorney who says he wants to restore faith and trust in the office of Attorney General.
As your Attorney General, it is my duty and obligation to represent those regardless of their station in life, from those that are weakest and the most vulnerable among us to those that are the most powerful, because no person or no individual is above the law.
Walking the halls of the Capitol won't be anything new for longtime legislator Michelle Reagan, sworn in as Arizona's new Secretary of State.
To be your next Secretary of State, the keeper of the public trust, the office of goodwill, the preservation of Arizona's history, and what I hope to add, outreach and transparency through technology.
And finally, Doug Ducey, most recently the state's treasurer. He's the co-founder of the ice cream chain Cold Stone Creamery and a graduate of Arizona State University. He told the crowd he'd tackle the state's budget.
So I will say to the legislature, we can do this. We can get these fiscal troubles behind us, exactly as the Arizona Constitution demands. We can put the Arizona budget in balance, and we can keep it there.
A projected $1 billion deficit he promises to work with the legislature.
4 times, starting next week, I will submit balanced budgets to the House and Senate. Fair warning, the budget will not be met with general approval among special interests. And if they did approve, I'd start to worry.
And he says fixing won't come with newer, higher taxes.
It will be said that the state has already found all the savings that can be found, cut every line item that can be cut, and now every option exhausted. It is for the people to pay for the shortfall with higher taxes. And I will reply, not on our watch.
And looking to the future, he says education will be a priority.
No matter how much we grow in prosperity, the right to a real education will not depend on family wealth or sheer luck. It will be a first principle of my agenda that schools and choices available to affluent parents must be open to all parents, whatever their means, wherever they live, period.
The pomp and circumstance of inauguration, an emotional moment.
It's an extreme blessing for me, for a cowboy from Kingman, Arizona, to stand in front of you and swear that I will uphold the Constitution. I take the Constitution of Arizona very seriously, and I promise you faithfully I will do my best to make sure everybody else obeys the Constitution too. Thank you so much again for the opportunity to serve you. I want to thank my staff, all the rest of my family, especially Governor Symington. Governor J.D. Hull was right here for the first time I was sworn in, and my good friend Janice Brewer. We spent a lot of time together. We were the best of friends. We're still the best of friends, and I know that I can always count on her to be there with me whenever I need the help. Again, may God bless Arizona, and may God bless America again.
And a day to thank the voters.
For letting me live out the American dream. You know, it's funny. Allergies, sorry. Who would have thought it? Public school kid, Desert Cove Elementary, Shadow Mountain. Paradise Valley School District representing, all right. Who would have thought that a public school kid, son of immigrants, who didn't even speak English as his first language, would be standing up here as your Attorney General?
The new administration brings a host of experiences and personalities. Barrett Marson is a political consultant with a focus in politics, and he says this team, this term, brings a whole new level of energy.
This is, Inauguration Day is really about talking about your lofty goals and discussing your vision for the future. The details for a lot of these people will come out in the next week or two as we see the budgets come out. Certainly for Doug Ducey, as he gives his first State of the State, then we will see rubber hit the road.
For Republicans, this is probably a dream team. We heard about how it's going to be a cohesive unit.
It's been a long time since we've had a governor and an attorney general who will be working so closely. Jan Napolitano and Terry Goddard, obviously both Democrats. Jan Brewer and Tom Horn, both Republicans. But Mark Brnovich and Doug Ducey, I think, are going to be a great team together, working to improve the state, defend the state, and really go after bad guys from Mark Brnovich and really do some great policy things for Doug Ducey. The team here, it's young. It's a mobile team. These are people who have ambitions, who, Doug Ducey set out to run for treasurer 4 years ago, and everyone talked about how he would probably want to be governor, and, he made that goal come true today. Mark Brnovich was really just an agency head and didn't have a lot of higher political aspirations, and decided to take on an incumbent and did the improbable. He won. So, this is a guy who's going to rise fast in the near future. So you really got a team here of people who are young and ambitious and, again, very cohesive as a unit.
Do you foresee any butting heads with the legislature?
Oh, always. There will always be some push and pull between the executive and the legislature. Even though they're both controlled by Republicans, you're still going to see different and competing ideas come out of both the legislature and the executive, the ninth floor. So for people to think, well, it's two Republican units and they'll just work together cohesively, that is not always the case. Fife Symington always ran into problems with the legislature. Governor Brewer clearly had issues with the legislature. They sued her, as a matter of fact. So just because it's two Republican groups doesn't mean they're going to see eye to eye on everything.
Doug Ducey spoke very adamantly about the budget and no new taxes. How long before we see that start to change?
Well, I don't know. Well, first, I don't think we're ever going to see that start to change, but we will see where he wants to go in the next week or 2 weeks. He'll release his budget next week, likely, and we'll see how he makes up a deficit, where he wants to go going forward. So I think that he wants to, I'm sure that he wants to keep to his no new taxes or no increased tax pledge, and he'll work very hard to ensure that that doesn't happen.
Doug Ducey didn't talk a lot about the past of Arizona. Moving to the future, as we've seen, that's the slug that he's talking about, Arizona future. So does he help or hurt himself not referring to what has happened here?
Well, he is all about the future. Again, he did have, his hashtag for the inaugural was AZ Future. This is a guy who spent the last year talking about what he will do in the future. You're right, he is not about looking back and taking from Arizona's history. He is going to forge his own story, and he's going to make that as positive as possible. He's going to try and create a storyline and a vision that comes directly from him, his experience here in Arizona. He really did come from very low. I mean, he was just came here to Arizona as a ASU student and helped start Cold Stone Creamery, and now he wants to take what he learned from there and translate it to the state as a whole. So that's going to be his vision. He really does want to try and create a broader and better Arizona.
Arizona's been on the radar for 1070, 1062. Do you foresee anything coming up this session?
Arizona, well, for this session, I am hoping that we're going to leave some of the controversy behind, deal with a significant problem, the budget. I'm hoping that is going to be everyone's main focus. But Arizona has been and will continue to be in the spotlight. We share a border with Mexico. We are ground zero for everything that happens on the border. So you're going to see that continue. I am hopeful that we won't see so much of the legislation that is needless and gives Arizona a bad name come through.
A few of the state's newly sworn-in officers were available immediately following Monday's inauguration. Here's my interview with Attorney General Mark Brnovich.
Arizona is such a great place. It's a place that folks come here for all sorts of reasons, but they all want a better future. And I think that's what Arizona offers, whether it's students or seniors or immigrants, no matter who they are, they come here to better themselves and to better their families' lives.
How would you describe yourself to Arizonans who maybe just elected you or maybe those who didn't? Who is Mark Brnovich?
I am someone that grew up here in the Phoenix area, went to school at Arizona State. I'm a public school kid, and I was brought up, I'm the son of immigrants, and I was brought up that we have an obligation to give something back. I just have such a deep love and appreciation for this country and what it has to offer, being the beacon of freedom and liberty out there. And so I've always been driven, and whether those are the choices I made in serving in our National Guard or serving as a federal prosecutor or state prosecutor or even running for office, I believe that we have a duty to give back to a country and a state that's given us so much.
You were pretty straightforward about fighting for the average person, the average Arizonan. Will we see much change in our previous Attorney General to the Mark Brnovich era?
I think so. I think that Arizonans expect and deserve an attorney general that's going to be much more aggressive in going after those that prey on the most vulnerable in our society, that's going to be there to protect our kids, that's going to be there to protect our seniors. When folks like my mother get scammed, they need to know that there are lawyers in the attorney general's office to prosecute those cases and make sure the victims get justice.
Is there a message for the bad guys out there in Arizona?
Yeah, that if you prey on the most vulnerable, we will find you, we will prosecute you, we will convict you.
What about being a part of this Republican team that we have coming into state offices?
I think that what we've seen is, folks are frustrated with what's going on. I think folks are frustrated with what's going on in Washington, D.C. and how dysfunctional things are there in Washington. Here in Arizona, folks wanted a strong, resounding team that's going to emphasize being forward-looking, putting our economy back to work, enforcing the rule of law. And I think that's what Arizonans voted for.
There may be people who are still having issues with trust with your predecessor. How do you tell them things are changed, there's a new sheriff in town?
Well, very often it is said that if you want to know what someone's going to do in the future, you should look at their past. And as I said in my remarks today, integrity is so important. One of the first things I learned on a job when I was a prosecutor, when you're a prosecutor and you have that ability to affect people's livelihoods, their life, liberty, property, you're always going to be held to a higher standard. And that's what I've done throughout my career, whether we're serving as a state prosecutor, federal prosecutor, serving our country in the armed forces. I've always held myself up to the highest standards, and I wouldn't expect anything less out of me or any of those folks that work for me.
So often we hear elected officials say, I'm not a politician. Will it take time to prove that to people?
I'm not a politician. I've never run for office before, and frankly, I did get a little choked up there. But this is very overwhelming to me. I mean, it's just this is just such a great state, such a great country. I just feel so blessed and humbled at the same time.
The Office of State Treasurer is one of the lesser known about positions, and that's okay with our new treasurer, Jeff DeWitt.
The vision for treasurer, it's a non-political office, it's an administrative office. And so, really, if I'm doing my job well, hopefully I'm out of the news.
Oh, okay.
And so, just want to handle the money, do a good job, and hopefully keep things moving forward for Arizona.
In your speech today, you mentioned what that primary was like when no one would show up to your event in Sierra Vista and in Tucson, and yet here you are today.
Well, I think it comes down to what I said after that about putting 50,000 miles on the car. And if voters weren't going to come to me, I was going to go to them. And I met with every group and every voter I could find, and I was doing up to 4 speeches a day. And once I drove 4 hours each way because I got 5 minutes to talk to a group. And I think it was that determination and that vision is what they responded to.
What do you tell people about what this position entails for the state?
Well, we oversee about $30 billion in inflows and outflows, and we safeguard $13 billion in taxpayer assets. And so one of the things I like to talk about on the campaign trail was we need someone in this job that understands finance. It's not the job for a politician, and as I said, I've made no secret of the fact that I'm not a politician. I'm a finance guy, and that's what this job demands.
The founder of Echo Trade, you have some experience of being able to manage the state monies. How would you describe this position to people that are thinking, you say you're not a politician, but they all say that?
Well, I think it's obvious because I've never run for anything in my life, not even homeroom rep back in school. And so this was all a new experience for me, but I want to keep it that way where this office is a non-political one. And I think my job is to keep the money out of the hands of the politics and really protect taxpayers.
Talk about this Republican sweep that we have in the offices this time around, a fairly young team.
Yes.
What do you envision for the state moving forward?
I'm excited for the state moving forward. We do have a young team. We have a very hard-working team. I think it was neat all throughout the campaign trail. We got to know each other, and I got to see how hard all of us, all the statewide candidates, really worked to get where we are, to be in a position to serve Arizona. And we do have a team that I think is inspirational and transformative and is going to do a great job of serving the state. Everybody here really has the right heart and the right vision, and I'm excited to be a part of this team.
At Monday's reception, I did request an interview with Superintendent of Public Instruction Diane Douglas, and my request was denied. The buzz now, and I'm joined by my colleague Christopher Conover. Christopher, we were up there together, and Diane Douglas didn't speak a lot during the campaign. Are we likely to see this continue throughout her tenure?
As you said, we tried to talk with the superintendent at the reception right after the inaugural, and she said no. Our colleague Fernanda Echavarri, who covers education amongst other things, has been trying to talk to her this week about the issues of minority studies classes at TUSD, the Tucson Unified School District. She's been turned down for interviews there. Diane Douglas did issue a statement about that, but we haven't seen a lot of her in interviews. We'll see if that changes as she gets her feet under her in the office, but at this point we're really not seeing a lot of interviews, just statements.
And to be fair, Joe Hart, Michelle Reagan, Doug Ducey, we did not see them at that reception, though we understand Michelle Reagan, Doug Ducey sort of mingled with the crowd, if you will, hours after the inauguration. The other big news, of course, Doug Ducey talked a lot about the economy, but I think some people were looking for more specifics that we didn't feel like we saw during the campaign either.
His reception, if you go back and watch the tape, it was polite applause. There was no big applause line. There was no standing ovation line at all. And you're right, it was a lot of generalities, a lot of what we heard on the campaign trail. Now, on Monday, the governor must deliver the State of the State address to the legislature. Some people have referred to that as the legislature's marching orders, what the governor wants them to do. We're going to have to get some more specifics at that point. Later in the week, the governor will issue his first budget, in some ways a wish list, because the legislature doesn't have to listen to him, even though he holds veto power over the budget. We will get even more specifics then. So in the coming few days, we should hear more specifics on the programs and how he wants to accomplish things.
As we heard throughout the program, a $1 billion deficit that's projected. Doug Ducey says he wants to work closely with the legislature, but again, he said no new higher taxes. Some people might wonder, how do you do that?
That's the billion-dollar question, quite literally. We're still waiting to find out from the court and the state if they can reach an agreement on how we're going to back pay the public school system, the money that is owed them, hundreds of millions of dollars. We have this billion-dollar shortfall. Doug Ducey said, not on my watch for any new taxes. There's only so much state revenue. It's a tricky thing. He also said, and this is a very common thing we hear from politicians, no accounting tricks, which means pushing some payments off or things like that. It's going to be a very interesting thing to deal with because between education and Medicaid, that's 60% of the budget right there. Those are difficult things to cut, which only leaves 40% of the budget left. That's a lot of cutting out of 40%. It's going to be a very interesting budget year, to say the least.
And will take some time for us to see anything. On the federal level, Martha McSally, representative, now taking her post officially in D.C. this past week and getting a pretty nice gig to go with it.
She did. She got, as a brand new freshman walking in the door, she got a subcommittee chairmanship. That's something for a freshman to get. She seems like she was going to get up there and try and make waves as quickly as she can. For her politically, hopefully positive. Of course, the Democrats are hoping those waves are negative, but she's going to go up there and do what she can very quickly. Our other new representative, Ruben Gallego, a Democrat in Phoenix, he got a nice shout out from the president when the president visited Phoenix at the end of the week, and he managed to hitch a ride back to Washington on Air Force One. So he had a good week politically also as a Democrat.
The president in Phoenix talking about the nation's housing recovery. Any big surprises there?
No big surprises. As he said, the State of the Union address is coming up, so he's beginning to lay out some of the programs that he is going to lay out later this month in the State of the Union address. This one dealt with housing, more affordable housing, lowering interest rates at the FHA, saying if we can get more people into affordable housing, that helps the economy. Maybe some new construction, which means new jobs. If people are in housing. It is a bit of a forced savings long term for those of us who own houses. We understand that. So it's all part of this economic recovery that the president has been pushing. The interesting thing is the economy has turned around a great deal nationwide, even in the housing market. But when you look at Arizona, we're still behind the rest of the nation on the recovery of the housing market, and as a result, our economy is behind the rest of the nation. So Arizona is still a little tenuous.
Remains to be seen. Okay, Christopher Conover, thanks for your analysis. We'll look forward to more of your reports as the legislature gets underway. And here now is our sister station, KAT's Ted Simons, for an analysis with Mike Orr. He's from the W.P. Carey School of Business at Arizona State University. Here's his analysis of the president's visit.
What exactly did the president propose?
Well, the main thing is this reduction in mortgage insurance, which if you go back 5 years, it was down at 0.5%. So it's actually increased a lot over the last few years as FHA wanted to insure themselves against bad debt. It's risen to 1.35, and Obama was talking about taking it back down to 0.85. So that's quite a significant reduction.
So from 1.35 to 0.85, cutting mortgage insurance could affect a couple 100,000 folks?
The White House estimate is about 250,000 extra buyers with FHA loans over the next 3 years, but that's for the whole country, of course.
Right.
I mean, I think this is a step in the right direction, but it's not a huge thing. You know, it's not going to make a dramatic difference to the market.
Starting this month, the Federal Housing Authority will lower its mortgage insurance premium rates enough to save the average new borrower more than $900 a year. Now, that's $900 that can go towards paying the groceries, or gas, or a child's education, or depending on what your mortgage is, it might be a month's mortgage payment. And for those who aren't familiar with FHA, FHA underwrites, it guarantees, it's the backstop for a lot of loans around the country, especially for middle-class folks. So a lot of people pay these fees. And if they're saving $900, that's money that's going to be going throughout the economy. Over the next 3 years, these lower premiums will give hundreds of thousands more families the chance to own their own home. And it'll help make owning a home more affordable for millions more households overall in the coming years.
It's basically designed to make things affordable for people who are lower incomes but creditworthy. And it's very popular with first-time home buyers.
And folks, as we mentioned before, these creditworthy borrowers have been shut out. Why?
Well, everybody is very nervous about lending to people with poor credit because of what happened in 2007, 8, 9. And so we've swung from credit being very, very loose to being very, very tight. And now we're trying to sort of gradually shift it back to the middle position where the right people get loans and the wrong people don't.
And that's our program. Thanks for joining us. Be sure to tune in next week. We'll learn more about Governor Ducey's plan in his State of the State address. Plus, we'll travel to Phoenix for the first full week of the session for the Arizona Legislature. For all of us at Arizona Public Media, I'm Lorraine Rivera.